everyone. Welcome to Alpine Intel's The Savvy Adjuster podcast, where you'll hear from experts about insurance-related topics important to adjusters and other insurance professionals. I'm your host, Alpine Intel Sales Operations Manager, Chris Nichols. Now, Alpine Intel is known for its commitment to providing service offerings to our clients across the property, auto, liability, and workers' comp insurance fields. That includes delivering comprehensive answers to complex claims related to specific business critical equipment. Now, going to the dentist may not be everyone's favorite pastime, but we all go crossing our fingers and hope to receive a clean bill of health and not to have to go back for another 6 months. But what happens when the dental equipment is compromised? Well, that is what we are talking about today. I'm joined by Corporate Vice President Bob Carbon and Vice President of Engineering Mikey Miner, who can shed some light on what adjusters should know about these claims and the best practices to get the equipment back to pre-loss condition. They are with TechLoss Consulting and Restoration, which is a part of Alpine Intel's suite of services, and they provide solutions for commercial business critical equipment and high net worth residential claims nationwide. We are so glad to have the both of you on the Savvy Adjuster podcast. Bob, Mikey, thank you for joining us here today.
Our pleasure. Thanks for having us.
For sure.
So we always like to, before we dive into this topic today, we love to hear a little bit about our guests' backgrounds and would love to hear about yours. Robert, let's start with you or Bob. Can you tell us a little bit about your background for our listeners?
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you very much for having us. So my name is Bob Carbon. I joined this industry back in the 90s and started TechLoss Consulting. Over the years, we grew working in the vertical of working with the insurance and legal industries on loss that involved damage, equipment, and technology failures. I've got a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering technology and a master's degree in entrepreneurial business. And I've been actively growing and working in the business for many, many years, and have got a lot of great stories involving equipment for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for joining us. Mikey, same question to you. Would love to hear a little bit more about your background.
Yeah, I've got a bachelor's in electrical engineering technology from Milwaukee School of Engineering. Been with TechLoss for about 22, well, more than 22 years at this point. Started as a lowly associate part-time engineer and worked my way up. And like Bob said, we've been through some interesting things over the years, catastrophes and large losses and all over the continental United States and in Canada and Mexico. So we've got plenty of experience in a lot of different fields and with a lot of different equipment.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like we are in good hands with the both of you today. And again, thank you for joining us. Listener, a quick disclaimer before we jump in. Obviously, each claim is unique. And on this podcast, we do speak in general terms. It's always important to get an expert assessment to make sure you have the facts to make a settlement decision that accounts for all the evidence related to each claim. All right. So this episode is titled, and there is a pun coming, Drilling into What to Do with Dental Equipment Claims. And while most of us instantly, at least I do, think of a dental drill when talking about a dentist office, it's really not the only equipment that may be included in these types of claims. So, Mikey, would love to start with you. Can you walk us through what all there might be in a dental office?
Yeah, definitely. And dental is a very broad term as well, because we do see the difference between your normal everyday dentist office where you go and have your checkups to your dental surgery centers, which are significantly different in the complexity and array of equipment that's involved. So in your everyday dental type office, you're going to see a lot of dental chairs. That's one of the biggest things. Attached to those are the delivery systems, which is a fancy way of talking about the tools that are used during that. And then the x-rays, of course, that everybody loves to get, along with all of the cleaning equipment and other diagnostic equipment that may be involved. And then in addition to those exam rooms, you have operatory rooms. And so all the equipment that's associated with that, whether that's your root canal, your crown installation. And then in the back area, there's usually a lab, which is where they make the molds, they sterilize the equipment. So there's a real wide array of equipment that's in a dental office, and a lot of it is not customer facing.
Yeah, it's and luckily for me, I'm knocking on one right now. I haven't had to see those specialized rooms much in my dental history. It's usually just the every 6 month cleaning. So it's interesting you bring up all the back end stuff that TechLoss can evaluate as well. Stuff I, again, luckily don't or haven't had to historically think of. So that's interesting. Um, well, now that we kind of know what's included in these claims, and again, it's not just the drills; it's all the stuff that Mikey just mentioned. Would love to talk a little bit about why they might be malfunctioning. Bob, maybe get your thoughts on this next question, and Mikey as well. What are some of the perils that can impact this type of equipment?
Yeah, well, definitely. So, dental equipment is very sensitive and uh, you know, really needs to be running at optimal, condition to provide a consistent, product for the customer. But dental equipment itself could be damaged by things such as power surge, water losses, smoke contamination. We've had situations where it could be damaged due to handling, and really just about any type of a scenario. Believe it or not, we get situations all the time where cars drive through walls and damage equipment like this. So you'd be amazed in some of the different ways equipment could be damaged and some of the damages it could sustain.
I'm thankful my dentist is on a seventh floor of, of a building after your example of a car driving through the wall on that. And Mikey, I know you mentioned your vast experience, 22 years doing this. Anything else to add as far as what you've maybe seen some perils that may impact this type of dental equipment?
Yeah, well, to join in your pun fun with the drilling down, I'm sorry to rain on your parade about your seventh floor dentist, but broken pipes in the ceiling are quite often, and whether that water's coming down from above onto the equipment or coming up from below in a pipe in the floor or in the next room over, we do see a lot of those water type losses, and especially to the dental chairs where there's electronics and motors and other equipment in the bottom of those devices. Quite often that's what takes the brunt of that water contamination. And so the question is, are those chairs good candidates to be evaluated, cleaned, repaired, or are they a total loss as quite often reported by the vendors involved?
Sure. Yeah. Well, thanks for again raining on my parade. I guess I am just not safe no matter what floor I'm on. But Bob, I'll switch back over to you. So when an adjuster gets a claim that includes this kind of dental equipment, I would love to know what should they do first.
Well, we love the idea of them calling TechLoss first so we can give them direction so that we could help them to minimize damage and really get control over the damages so things don't spiral out of condition. But for sure, in situations where there's water losses or water contamination, we would most definitely advise that they disconnect power from all of the equipment, they unplug everything. It's a good idea to put a sign on the equipment saying do not touch, do not power up. Basic things like opening up cabinet doors, removing maybe wet contents from inside the equipment will help to minimize damage and minimize problems down the road. Uh, Things as basic as turning on your air conditioning if the air conditioning system has not been affected to help to remove some of the humidity from in the environment from inside the environment, nothing but helpful. And then in other situations, like let's say a smoke loss, where there's been a fire and you have some smoke that's on the equipment, again, disconnecting power, ensuring nobody turns anything on. We don't want anybody to get shocked or be hurt from this equipment, making sure it's not turned on. Because believe it or not, when something's wet, if it's not under power, it's not that big of a problem. Water is an integral part of the manufacturing process. It's really when you take this equipment that's wet and you introduce power to it, that's where a big problem occurs, because then you have shorting that could occur because you've got water, which is now really shorting between a ground plane and a power plane. Or in situations where there's smoke, by turning something on, also you could have shorting, but you're also going to turn on fans that will draw smoke in and bring smoke and contamination further inside of equipment. So then you're going to elevate the problem from just being maybe a situation where there's contamination outside equipment to now being drawn into it complicating the cleaning process and complicating the recovery process. So we like to provide really some hands-on, straightforward sense on here's things you could do, here's things you don't want to do. And then, of course, we really work hard to dispatch our engineers to come out to the site when necessary, perform evaluations, provide direction to both the insured and to the adjuster, and we help to oversee that technology part of the claim.
Yeah, well, that's very good to know about the best practices, right? To have the equipment ready to be evaluated. I would think unplugging it would be one of the major things, but I appreciate you kind of going over that and other things to get this pretty technical equipment prepped for, like you said, your engineer to come out, do a full evaluation. So I know you mentioned a couple causes of loss, and this is just kind of a curiosity question on my part, but historically with dental equipment, is there one peril that stands out more than others, or say smoke and fire or water intrusion that affect this kind of equipment, or is it kind of all across the board with dental equipment?
Yeah, I would say it's all across the board. We definitely see a lot of water and a lot of lightning, but that's just pretty typical for our line of business that
Yep.
people come to us when they think of water and electronics don't mix. Lightning hits a building, we're afraid for what's happened to all the electronics, and so TechLoss is the go-to when it comes to that, regardless of if it's dental or something else.
Sure.
Chris, I'd also like to just throw in there also, believe it or not, a peril that we see quite often, which will surprise everybody, is the situations where people believe something's damaged and it's really not even damaged. By coming in and doing our evaluation, we're able to really quantify and verify the damages. And it's easy after a loss occurs in somebody's mind to think, oh, everything's bad, everything's damaged. And really, when we get down to things in a real granular way, we're able to identify here's the things that are damaged. Let's work with these things. Here are items that weren't affected. You could be assured that these were not part of the claim.
And how big is just general wear and tear? Do you see that on a handful of assignments that you've sent out to where it's just old equipment?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that happens quite a bit. And again, it's easy for people to lump things into one pile, and we really do work hard to break things apart and add a lot of science and language in testing to help to quantify and determine what's what, and then lay things out in black and white in a report for somebody to see.
Sure.
And I'll add on dental losses, especially, we see the modern day, very fancy, large dental offices with multiple practitioners, but we still run into a lot of those, old timer, one dentist has a single chair in their office and they haven't updated that technology in 20, 30, 40 years. And so quite often, indeed, we're dealing with stuff where it was working before, something happened, it's not working now. And so their assumption is it must be due to that thing that happened. But realistically, a 40-year-old chair could easily malfunction due to age on its own.
Yeah, from personal experience, the first time I was visiting my dentist, he had a very unique piece of equipment on the wall, and it did look relatively archaic. And he said, "Yeah, it still works. It's an X-ray machine from the '60s. I'm about to remove it and upgrade." I thought, "Thank you very much for upgrading this. I would like things not to be used on me prior to me being alive." But yeah, to your point, it could just be it's an old piece of equipment that has just lasted longer than it should have and has finally kind of failed. So yeah, absolutely. We had kind of mentioned cleaning, restoration, and my understanding, restoration sometimes doesn't mean the act of restoring it to pre-loss condition, but maybe making it ready for an assessment. So this is kind of to the both of you, Bob. I'd love to start with you, but what does that process look like, and really, what do you think an adjuster should expect from getting an assessment?
For sure. Well, with restoration, it's an interesting aspect. Restoration really just means removing contamination from a machine and helping to stabilize that equipment. And once that equipment is stabilized, then our team could help to have repairs performed, ensure that everything is truly at its pre-loss condition. We could help to verify damages. We could help to determine if it's still under contract, maintenance agreement, what have you. There's all different types of inspections that could be done on equipment after a loss like this to help verify, damages and confirm the damages.
And Mikey, anything to kind of add as far as like the process overall, and maybe what an adjuster should expect when they connect with TechLoss and get that initial inspection from you or assessment?
Yeah, and first I'll just touch on what Bob said because we have a couple examples that are very clear cut over the years where we went in and looked at some equipment that was not functional, found significant water contamination on one small portion of that equipment, even like where the wires connect to the contactors, and identified that removing that contamination would likely allow that equipment to return to partial or full functionality. And so the restoration, like Bob's saying, allowed it to be further tested by removing that contamination. And sure enough, after that happened, that testing occurred, the one or two parts that were damaged could be replaced, and the equipment was returned to full functionality. But the first person who attempted to turn it on, it wasn't doing what it was supposed to. So they assumed that's a total loss. So getting in there, putting a set of eyes on it, understanding how that piece of equipment works, and if water's on a certain part of it, it can affect the operation of the remainder, but it doesn't mean that the remainder is actually damaged. It's just not allowed to operate the way it needs to.
Sure.
So just to add to that, also some of that stabilization really comes into play again in smoke situations where you may have active corrosion that could start forming after a short amount of time. So really to get in there and stabilize the equipment by removing the contamination, and now we don't have a time factor that we're battling against. We know the equipment's going to not going to continue to spiral into worse and worse condition. It's stabilized, it could be evaluated, and the proper steps could be taken.
Hey, you've mentioned removing contamination a couple times, right? Which is important in the restoration process. How do you go about doing that? Can you talk a little bit about the ways to remove contamination from these items?
Yeah, I mean it's a very physical process, and quite honestly, the restoration process requires equipment to be disassembled, oftentimes down to its frame, and it is a physical washing process. So utilizing specialized detergents, specialized water, we're able to wash the equipment, use agitating things like brushes to help to remove contamination, blow dry it with compressed air, and making sure there's not any kind of a static issue, putting it into a convection oven where it's baked out for a certain period of time to help to verify that all the water is off the boards and off the equipment, doing a hand wipe to spot clean different areas to verify no contamination and no water spotting is present, reassembling that equipment, and then turning it back on. So it's a very, very physical process. But through this process, we're really able to not only remove the contaminant, but also understand better what we're dealing with. And if we see any other issues, such as signs of power surge or signs of corrosion, that we could then tell the engineer, who will then make sure that those types of issues are resolved. Because we walk into a situation dealing with equipment of unknown condition with unknown issues. And at the end of our process, we will return that equipment to its pre-loss condition. And it's important to drill down that when we say pre-loss condition, that means that not only will the equipment look the same and smell the same, but it's going to operate the same. And even going one step further, if the insured had a service contract or maintenance agreement on that equipment, we're going to ensure that that equipment is back to its pre-loss condition and all those agreements are back in place. So we truly do work to verify that everything is at its pre-loss condition. And oftentimes we bring in vendors and bring in experts to help us with that process, because it is a big process, especially when you think about all the different types of equipment that we deal with on a regular basis.
Yeah, that is wildly more thorough than I thought I thought I was going to get for an answer, which is fantastic. And I assumed it was a little bit more in depth than a bottle of Windex and a couple wet wipes out there. I'm assuming, Mikey, you're not going out and doing this cleaning, or that's not part of the engineering side of things, correct?
Correct. Yeah, we will work with our restoration department and with outside vendors, depending on the type of equipment, the nature and extent of the damages, and identify the most appropriate route, depending on many factors, whether that's how soon it needs to be back in place, the location of it geographically, if it is under a service contract and we need to work within certain limitations because of that.
But I mean, Chris, you're right with what you're saying, where the engineers are out there doing evaluations of equipment. We've got a team of engineers throughout the United States made up of many, many different types of disciplines, primarily in the electrical engineering space, but we've got aerospace engineers, we've got different types of engineers, and we're all out there evaluating damages, evaluating losses for our clients, and really helping them to resolve the technology part of the claim, no matter what the loss is and no matter what the type of equipment is.
And I know we're primarily focused on dental equipment, but just really all kind of, businesses in general. I would imagine that having some of these items down for a day, a week, longer than that can really affect the overall success and revenue of a business. So, can tech loss help in securing, say, similar to if you get into a car accident, you get a rental car, right? Are there options for loaner equipment to reduce downtime and business disruption that tech loss can help with?
Well, most definitely. Because we are so specialized in equipment and technology, we absolutely have resources that we can call upon to help not only locate a single piece of loaner equipment, but truth be told, we've got programs in place with companies specifically with dental equipment. So if desired, we could literally have a complete dental lab set up in somebody's parking lot in a matter of a couple of days. So you could have a fully functional office, and we do this because we want to make sure we think of all the different issues and problems that the insured and the adjuster might have, and we want to find a way to streamline that process and get people back up and running and minimize business interruption. So specifically with dental equipment, we can get anything you want in a very short amount of time, whether it's in an office or setting up a temp office or even renting a location for an office to be working out of. We can do it all, and we've done it all.
That's very interesting. Well, good to know, and I'm sure the businesses obviously appreciate the fact that they, as little days that they have to be shut down as possible is good for them. So, we again, we've been kind of specifically talking about dental equipment in this episode, but Mikey, maybe I'll ask this to you: how does that compare to other medical facilities? What other kind of items are out there that can be assessed by tech loss?
Sure. So the interesting thing is when you're thinking about electronics, electrical equipment, so many of the individual components are the same across many, many different disciplines. So if you understand how a resistor works, how a capacitor works, how a transformer works, that can really apply in a lot of that equipment. But when you're talking about dental and medical, there are some additional complexities. You're more often going to run into your X-ray machines. You're going to run into equipment that's being anticipated to be wiped down every day or after every individual user. And so it's designed with more prevention of chemicals and washing being drawn into the equipment through seams and openings. Sometimes you have equipment that needs to be put into an autoclave so it can be sterilized. And so a lot of it is patient facing, your chairs, your beds, your equipment like that. A lot of it is mobile. It's on carts, so they can move it from room to room and stay at hospital. But then you also deal with the really large and complex, MRIs, X-rays, CT scanners, things that you don't run into in many other fields except for medical and medical adjacent fields.
It sounds like wildly specialized equipment. And it's nice to have a partner like TechLoss out there that has the skill set and acumen to do those in-depth inspections, assessments, things like that. So, really great information. I'm not going to lie, Bob. I am still thinking about this mobile dental lab in the parking lot as an option, and and love that I know that that's out there sometimes. No, that's great. I appreciate you both for sharing all that information. We do like to kind of end the podcast sometimes with stories from the field, right? Real life examples of things you've seen. And so I would love to kind of ask that question. And Mikey, we can start with you because I know obviously you're doing a lot of these assessments, but anything in your past, it could be recent, could be 10 years ago, but an example of maybe dental equipment that TechLoss has assessed and um, you know, the listener might find interesting, unique. Would love to hear any sort of stories you may have.
Sure, sure. Yeah, and seeing that stuff either myself or through the other engineers on the team, I'm very closely involved with understanding what's going on with all of our projects, and we are very big on working as a group to share our knowledge, share our backgrounds, make sure that we're doing all of this with everybody's knowledge and expertise together, not just the engineer who's assigned to that specific claim. Um, but yeah, we run into some interesting things sometimes where you go in expecting that a pipe burst, for example, and you get there and you find out that it was in fact a backup of raw sewage that occurred. And so that changes what you need to look at, how you need to look at it, what you might want to have on when you walk into that building yourself for protection. But you've got equipment, let's say for a dental office, that goes into people's mouths, right? And so you need to be very conscious of the fact that that needs to be considered. And as much cleaning as you may want to do, that's only going to get you so far until you have to go into a sterilization method, right? And at that point, a lot of that stuff is not designed to be sterilized in that way. And so that makes it a fairly clear cut, okay, we need to replace this. But that's only certain portions of that equipment, right? The remainder of the equipment that isn't going into someone's mouth, isn't touching their body, may have some opportunities for other remediation efforts. But yeah, it can quite often be that question doesn't come up until later on in the process, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, that changes things.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, things you have to think about. What do I need to wear during this? What's my outfit today? Is it a hazmat suit? Can I just wear a polo shirt and khakis? Yeah. So things you need to think about. Bob, how about you? I know you've been doing this for a really long time. Any unique stories about dental equipment out there, or just kind of in general that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, dozens and dozens of stories. So many situations where we've come into an office where somebody's experienced a loss. It's a smaller practice. It really means a lot to them to have us come in and help. And I could think of many situations where it's you walk in and there's just literally chaos. They don't have the ability to serve their clients. They're losing money. They've got a staff of people who can't work and want to work. And so I will just tell you, it's so refreshing to come into these situations and provide clarity. And I remember one situation specifically. It was a dental office. His office was at the end of the run of power poles, and somehow a ground line on the power pole had been cut, not by us, not by, I don't know who cut it. And his office was completely down. There was not a single piece of equipment that was not surge damaged. And I just remember getting there, finding out the level of damage and helping him to coordinate repairs and some replacements to keep them going. And just the joy in his face once we got his office back up and running, and really just to help to deliver those kinds of solutions where people don't know where to turn. And I'll just say, in our everyday lives, we really depend on equipment more than we ever think. And when there's a disruption in somebody's equipment life, it really does throw a monkey wrench. And so it's a beautiful thing to be able to step in and provide direction and solutions to get them back up and running. And again, just to see the joy on their face when we do that, it's worth everything right there.
Well, I think that's great. Thank you for sharing those kind of real life examples, and certainly appreciative of having TechLoss in the Alpine Intel suite of services. But big thanks to the both of you again for joining us today, sharing your insights. I learned a ton. I'm sure our listeners did as well. But again, Bob, Mikey, really appreciate you joining here today.
Our pleasure.
Our
Thank you
pleasure.
for having us.
So listeners, be sure to check out the show notes to get access on articles and guides that you can refer to during your next dental equipment claim. And of course, our entire resources library from our suite of services here at Alpine Intel is available at our website, which you guessed it is alpineintel.com. Make sure to bookmark that in your favorites. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the Savvy Adjuster podcast so you never miss an episode. Again, thanks for listening today, and we'll see you next time.